Hello, this is Colin Liddell and this is the Shortpod, the main virtue of which is its brevity. And today it is the 15th of December 2019. A few days ago we had the British general election. Most of the attention was on Boris Johnson's victory, but I'd like to concentrate on Scotland, my own native country, and the nature of the result in that part of the United Kingdom. Now, in 2014, under a lot of economic pressure from the British government and the European Union and major employers, the people of Scotland were kind of cajoled into voting against independence by a margin of 55% to 45%. Then, in 2016, the people of Britain voted to leave the European Union, although there were some interest in regional differences. London, of course, voted to stay, and Scotland also voted to stay by, I think, a margin of 62%. So this has set up a certain amount of tension in Anglo-Scottish politics. On the one hand, Scotland voted to remain in the Union, but did not vote to leave the European Union, whereas the new Boris Johnson government is, at least on the face of it, fully committed to Brexit. This has led to renewed calls for a second Scottish referendum by the SNP, on the basis that the SNP won the vast majority of Westminster seats in Scotland, and on the basis that Scottish voters in the 2016 referendum rejected Brexit. Now, Boris Johnson won his quite impressive electoral victory a few days ago on the basis of defending the result of the 2016 referendum, and I'm sure he's going to take a similar tack with regard to the renewed calls for independence. He's going to say that the Scottish people had a referendum and that it's his job to defend the result of that referendum, which was 55% against independence. But none of this changes the fact that Scotland is deeply divided by this issue. As I said before, the referendum in 2014, at least my understanding of the referendum, was that the Scottish people generally supported independence, but they were sort of economically blackmailed into rejecting it. But whatever way you look at it, the country is pretty much split down the middle. Essentially, you could say that Scotland wants independence, but also doesn't want independence. Now, I think that in order to break this kind of logical logjam, this painful paradox, we have to really engage in some really out there blue sky thinking. Now, I think the way to do this is to embrace both sides of the argument, to accept the drive for Scottish independence and also to accept the drive away from Scottish independence. Both have their own logic and impetus, and actually both can be fulfilled in surprisingly complementary ways. Now, the reason I say this is because there is actually a perfect example of something very, very similar that exists in the world today. I'm referring here to the Jewish community and the State of Israel. And as you know, Israel is a racial and national homeland for the Jews, but not all Jews live there. Most Jews still live in other places. In particular, in America, there's a very large number of Jews. Very, very few of those Jews are planning to relocate to the State of Israel. But at the same time, they like the idea that Israel is there, that it exists and, in a sense, expresses their nationalist identity. So I envisage something similar for Scotland. Now, what Israel is, it's a Jewish exo-state. A state that allows Jews to be, in a sense, nationally independent, while at the same time they remain united in a greater country. Now, this is obviously the only way that you can deal with this very, very paradoxical situation that we have in Scotland, where people want to remain part of a greater United Kingdom, but they also want to have some sort of national totem. So the way to solve the Scottish paradox is a Scottish exo-state. In the same way that Jews in Europe and America supported and helped to create an external Jewish state, a sort of outsourcing of their nationalistic urges, so I think Scotland should attempt something similar. While Scots can remain part of the United Kingdom, they can also outsource their nationalism to a distant exo-state located in a part of the world that has some ancient or ancestral connection to the Scottish race, if that's necessary, because even when the Zionists first had this concept of creating a Jewish state, it didn't necessarily have to be in Palestine. There were other possibilities. Madagascar, Crimea, Uganda, various places were discussed as the site of a prospective Jewish state. So a Scottish exo-state doesn't necessarily have to be in an area that has some ancestral connection with Scotland. But if it were to have some kind of connection with the ancient history of the Scots, there is, of course, the legend of Scotta, the mythical mother of the Scottish race, who, according to the legend, was the daughter of a pharaoh of Egypt who lived about the time of Moses. And she married somebody called Goidel Gael, and together, from this union, they created this new race that later became the Gaels. Now, in the aftermath of Moses leading the Hebrews out of Egypt, and the Pharaoh chasing him, and the Egyptian army being drowned in when the Red Sea closed, there was a kind of turbulent period in Egyptian history. And at this time, Scotta and Goidel Gael and their putative tribe then left Egypt and went and settled in Iberia, where they founded the city of Brigantia. And from Brigantia, they then migrated to Ireland, and then finally the Scotti, a Gaelic branch of people, came over to Scotland and created the Kingdom of Scotland, this much troubled Kingdom of Scotland that doesn't really know whether it wants to remain in the United Kingdom or be independent. Now, if the Scots adopt this hitherto unique Jewish model, and they remain united with a larger group, but at the same time found a nationalistic exo-state, then I think we can kind of square the circle here. We can defuse the paradox, and we can satisfy the Scottish urge to be independent and to not be independent, to have our cake and eat it. So that's my suggestion for dealing with this very troubling political issue, the Scottish exo-state. Over and out.